Applewood's 17th annual pageant. Happy 4th of July. Let me introduce your narrator, Berkey Berkowitz.
Welcome to Applewood's 17th annual 4th of July parade and ceremony, when we celebrate the founding of our country's 236 years ago, and for which the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. They knew full well that if they lost, they would be hanged, drawn, and quartered for the crime of high treason. And it's worth noting that on this day in 1776, King George wrote in his diary, "Nothing of importance happened this day." The purists among us may take exception to some of the events in our program as being not chronologically accurate. For this we ask your pardon. It may not be completely accurate in the telling of our country's origin, but it is surely in the spirit of the story. And here is the sheriff to open the festivities.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
As Sheriff of Applewood in the County of Hampshire, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I declare this 17th Annual Assembly of Residents and Friends in order. The warrant for this meeting has only one article, namely to celebrate with an appropriate combination of solemnity and historical inaccuracy the important events that took place 236 years ago today. A word of advice to those in the audience. If you have little children with you, discourage them from trying to become actors in the pageant. If you have animals, little or small, with you, discourage them from nipping at the heels of the real actors. And if you have cell phones, for goodness sakes, shut them off. Let the festivities begin.
Now, any town with a fire truck, a scout troop, and at least one ancient veteran must have an Independence Day parade. Well, we don't have the fire truck or the scout troop, but we do have ancient veterans. And here comes the parade. First, our marching kazoo band and chorus, led by our Grand Marshal, Jack Miller, and our Applewood Bicycle Brigade.
Oh, so elegant.
Now, we bring to life the painting by Archibald Willard, which was first titled Yankee Doodle.
The fellow in the wheelchair sort of disappeared somewhere. I don't know where he went.
Then became known as the Spirit of 76. It was painted in 1875 in time for the centennial of 1876. Thomas Jefferson said, "The spirit of 76 is not dead, and to prove it, here is the intrepid trio, the Spirit of 76. First coined during the War of 1812 and derived from the initial U.S. placed on government property, he has been the personification of our country for almost 200 years. Now welcome, Uncle Sam.
Uncle Sam wants you. Uncle Sam wants you. Uncle Sam wants you. And you. And you. And I don't think Uncle Sam wants you.
Now, Elizabeth Griscom, a devout Philadelphia Quaker, was born in 1751. When she married an upholsterer, John Ross, she became Betsy Ross. He died 3 years later, and she married Joseph Ashburn, who died 5 years later. So she married John Claypool, and that one took. In 1776, she was approached by George Washington, a family friend, to make the first flag of the United States, now among the oldest national standards in the world. There are some who don't believe she designed and made the first flag, that Francis Hopkinson designed it, but we know better. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Betsy Ross. Here's a gentleman who had a reputation in his time as a firebrand, an agitator. He began as a storekeeper, studied law, and was admitted to the bar. He told the world that if denied liberty, he preferred death, and that if this be treason, make the most of it. So please welcome Mr. Patrick Henry.
Peace.
There's a firebrand.
What did she say?
There's no peace, forget it.
Now we come to
Oh,
Mary
that was the same
Ludwig Hayes Macaulay. Who? Mary Ludwig Hayes Macaulay, the American Revolutionary War heroine. She was born in Trenton, New Jersey, and after working as a domestic servant, married a local man, John Hayes. He joined an artillery company in the 7th Pennsylvania Regiment at the outbreak of the American Revolution. Accompanying her husband to the Battle of Monmouth in 1778, she faithfully brought water in a pitcher to the artillerymen during the heat of the battle, earning the famous nickname Molly Pitcher. When her husband became incapacitated, she took over one of the field pieces, and in recognition of her valor, Washington himself issued her a warrant as a non-commissioned officer, and the Pennsylvania General Assembly awarded her a lifetime annuity. So please welcome Sergeant Molly Pitcher. And now we come to the man without whom we all probably would not be living the way we do. Born on a farm, he became a surveyor at the age of 14 and a major in the Virginia militia at 21. He was a member of the Virginia delegation to the Continental Congress, commander of the Continental Army throughout the Revolutionary War, president of the convention that drew up our Constitution, and for 2 terms, President of the United States. In December 1776, Washington's army was plagued by desertions and the refusal of many to re-enlist, and many began to fear the war was lost. But hope renewed when on Christmas night, Washington's army crossed the Delaware River and mounted a brilliant attack on the Hessians at Trenton. We all know the famous painting by Emanuel Leutze, Washington crossing the Delaware. And here he is, our first president, President George Washington, and his first mate, Tom, his boat, built by the Admiral Gianti shipyard, with a crew by Quartermaster General John Walker.
George! One for George!
In September 1779, John Paul Jones, aboard his flagship, was proceeding up the east coast of England looking for English cargoes to attack. He sighted 2 English warships with a convoy of naval supplies. He came in close and he opened fire. After an hour of fighting with slaughter on both sides, the British called for his surrender. He answered, "I have not yet begun to fight." The ships became locked together, and after 2 more hours of bloody battle, the enemy was worn down to exhaustion. The British commander, Captain Pearson, surrendered, marking the end of the battle. The news flashed through Europe. The Americans had beaten a British frigate in stand-up battle in England's home waters. So please welcome John Paul Jones and his prisoner, Captain Pearson. Now, a colossal copper figure conceived by Frederick Auguste Bartholdi. The Statue of Liberty was built in Paris in the 1870s, a gift from the people of France to the people of the United States. It became the symbol of welcome to immigrating thousands. In the words of Emma Lazarus, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." Well, we're always happy to see the Statue of Liberty. now are two of the original signers of the Declaration of Independence. John Hancock. Better? Better. John Hancock, Revolutionary Political Governor of Massachusetts and President of the Continental Congress. Benjamin Franklin, printer, publisher, scientist, statesman, philosopher, and member of the committee to draft the Declaration of Independence. Thank you. Welcome John Adams, our first president, and second vice president, and second president, and his lovely wife, Abigail. The letters of John Adams and his wife Abigail tell the story of the American Revolution. Her letters encouraged him when she agreed and badgered him to action when she disagreed. Today marks the 186th anniversary of his death and that of Thomas Jefferson on July 4th, 1826.
That's so long ago.
Now, with the completion of the parade, we have our program. And to open our program, please join our symphonic chorus in singing the Applewood anthem. The words are on your song sheets.
To Applewood, loudly we sing, we applaud her and laud her, and our caps in the air we will fling. From Hawaii to New Hampshire, from Miami out to no spots like Applewood, our own dear home. No spots like Applewood, our dear, dear home.
Patrick Henry served 2 terms as governor of Virginia and has the distinction of doing something no other politician in history, to my knowledge, has ever done. He was offered appointment as a U.S. Senator and turned it down. A year later, he was offered the office of Secretary of State and turned it down. And then finally, he was offered appointment as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and turned it down to continue the practice of law. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Patrick Henry.
Peace.
I hear the gentleman shouting, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The next gale that sweeps down from the north brings with it the clash of resounding arms. What is it that the gentlemen wish? What do they seek? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, that they can be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God! I know not what course others may choose, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death.
Well done. Well done.
The words to America the Beautiful were written by Catherine Lee Bates, a professor of English at Wellesley College, and published in a Boston religious periodical 117 years ago on July 4th, 1895. Now please join the chorus in singing America the Beautiful.
Shining sea, how beautiful for patriots dream that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
I now want to introduce a gentleman who took an historic horseback ride. As a renowned silversmith and engraver, he had other distinctions. He participated in that little party that turned Boston Harbor into a giant teacup. He designed and printed the first issue of Continental Money. He designed and engraved the first official seal for the colonies, and of equal importance to us here, designed and engraved the state seal of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere.
Love it.
If the British march by land or sea, from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church Tower as a signal light, 1 if by land and 2 if by sea. And I on the opposite shore will be ready to write and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm for the country folk to be up and to arm.
Our next song, This Land Is My Land, has lyrics by Woodrow Wilson Guthrie. Well, Woody Guthrie. So please join the chorus in singing, This Land Is My Land.
This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. When sun comes shining, and I was strolling, and the wheat fields waving, and the dust clouds rolling. The voice comes chanting, and the fog was lifting. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me.
One could almost write a history of the American Revolution from the hundreds of letters John and Abigail Adams exchanged, discussing the great issues and reporting the changes and challenges of the time. Here are two of the most famous. The first, from Abigail, was written soon after Washington drove the British from Boston with the help of munitions from Fort Ticonderoga. So let's listen in on a couple of letters blending love and patriotism, 18th century style.
I wish you would ever write me a letter half as long as I write you. What sort of defense can Virginia make against our common enemy? Are not the gentry lords and the common people vassals? I hope their riflemen, who have shown themselves very savage and even bloodthirsty, are not a specimen of the generality of the people. I am willing to allow the colony great merit for having produced a Washington, but they have been shamefully duped by a Dunmore. I have sometimes been ready to think that the passion for liberty cannot be equally strong in the breasts of those who have been accustomed to deprive their fellow creatures of theirs. Of this I am certain, that it is not founded upon that generous and Christian principle of doing to others as we would that others should do to us. I feel very differently at the approach of spring to what I did a month ago. We knew not then whether we could reap the fruits of our own industry, whether we could rest in our own cottages, or whether we should not be driven from the seacoast to seek shelter in the wilderness. But now we feel as if we might sit under our own vine and eat the good of the land. I feel a gaieté de cœur to which I was a stranger. I think the sun looks brighter, the birds sing more melodiously, and nature puts on a more cheerful countenance. We feel a temporary peace, and the poor fugitives, the people of Boston, are returning to their deserted habitations. I long to hear that you have declared an independency. And by the way, in the new code of laws, which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you would remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power in the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation. That your sex are naturally tyrannical is a truth so thoroughly established as to admit of no dispute. But such of you as wish to be happy willingly give up the harsh title of master for the more tender and endearing one of friend. Why then, not put it out of the power of the vicious and lawless to use us with cruelty and indignity? Men of sense in all ages abhor those customs which treat us only as vassals of your sex. Regard us, then, as beings placed by Providence under your protection, and in imitation of the Supreme Being, make use of the power only for our happiness.
Dear friend, you justly complain of my short letters, but the critical state of things and the multiplicity of avocations must plead my excuse. You ask what sort of defense Virginia can make. I believe they will make an able defense. The militia and Minutemen have been some time employed in training themselves, and they have 9 battalions of regulars, as they call them, maintained among them under very good spirits, and seem determined to make a brave resistance. The gentry are very rich, and the common people very poor. This inequality of property gives an aristocratical turn to all their proceedings, and occasions a strong aversion to their patricians to common sense, Tom Paine's pamphlet. But the spirit of these barons is coming down, and it must submit. Your description of your own gaiety du coeur charms me. Thanks be to God you have just cause to rejoice, and may the bright prospect be obscured by no cloud. As to declarations of independency, be patient. Read our privateering laws, note what signifies a word. As to your extraordinary code of laws, I cannot but laugh. We have been told our struggle has loosened the bands of government everywhere, that children and apprentices were disobedient. That schools are turbulent, that Indians slighted their guardians, and Negroes grew insolent to their masters. But your letter was the first intimation that another tribe, more numerous and powerful than all the rest, were grown discontented. This is rather too coarse a compliment, but you are so saucy. Blot it out. Depend upon it, we know better than to repeal our masculine systems. Although they reign in full force, you know they are little more than theory. We dare not exert our power in its full latitude. We are obliged to go fair and softly in practice, you know. We are the subjects. We have only the name of masters. Give that up, and we subject ourselves completely to the despotism of the petticoat. Against that, and against the enemy in the field, I hope General Washington and all our brave heroes will fight valiantly and masterfully.
Oh, wow.
Please join the chorus now in singing God Bless America.
Bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her. mountain, to the prairie, to the ocean, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
And now we come to the reason why we celebrate today of independence. It was a recitation of the causes that led to the separation and independence from Great Britain. To encourage his colleagues to sign, Ben Franklin said at the time, "We must all hang together, or most assuredly, we will all hang separately." In a letter composed by John Adams, he wrote, "This morning is assigned the greatest debate of all, a declaration that these colonies are free and independent states has been reported by a committee some weeks ago for that purpose, and this day or tomorrow is to determine its fate. May heaven prosper the newborn republic." At 10 o'clock, with the doors closed, John Hancock sounded the gavel. Richard Henry Lee's prior motion calling for independence was again read aloud. The Congress resolved itself into a committee of the whole and resumed consideration. That evening, a preliminary vote showed that a vote for independence would fail. The final vote was put off for a day. But then on July 2nd, with the abstention of New York, the vote was unanimous. It was John Adams more than anyone who had made it happen, and he poured out his feelings in another letter to Abigail.
July 2nd, 1776. The second day of July 1776 will be the most memorable epoch in the history of America. I'm apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be commemorated as the day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other, from this time forwards forevermore. You will see in a few days a declaration setting forth the causes which have impelled us to this mighty revolution and the reasons that will justify it in the sight of God and man.
Much still to be done. Congress had to review and approve the language of the drafted declaration before it could be made official. Over 80 changes were made to Jefferson's document, and approximately a quarter of what he had written was cut entirely, but enough remained. And on Thursday, July 4th, 1776, at about 11 o'clock in the morning, the vote taken. 12 colonies voted in the affirmative, while New York abstained. So now here are two of the original signers of the Declaration of Independence to sign the document. John Hancock of Massachusetts. Thank you. John Hancock of Massachusetts was president of the Continental Congress and governor of Massachusetts for 3 terms. He was the first to sign the document and did so in a very large hand. As he said, so King George can read it without his spectacles. Benjamin Franklin. Time limits a listing of all his accomplishments, but here are two. Inventor of the lightning rod and member of the committee to draft the Declaration of Independence. Here are just a few things that Thomas Jefferson's great document had to say. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. And to prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. And then follows a list of 27 separate charges against King George and his Parliament. And then, we therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown and all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. The poem that became our national anthem was written 200 years ago during the War of 1812 by Francis Scott Key from the deck of a British man-of-war while watching the bombardment of Fort McHenry. It's been said that he wrote no other noteworthy verse, but he didn't have to. This one was enough. Since most everyone knows the first verse of the national anthem, we will now have a recitation of the last two verses of our national anthem.
On the shore, dimly seen through the mists of the deep, where the foe's haughty host in dread silence reposes, what is that which the breeze o'er the towering steep, as it fitfully blows, half conceals, half discloses? Now it catches the gleam of the morning's first beam, in full glory reflected, now shines on the stream. 'Tis the star-spangled banner, oh, long may it wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Oh, thus be it ever, when free men shall stand between their loved homes and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven-rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must, when our cause it is just. And this be our motto: in God is our trust. And the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Now, will all who are able please rise for the raising of the flag by Rob Claflin and Naomi Berger, our oldest resident, who will serve as the honor guard.
By the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose dark stripes and bright stars through the perilous night, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streamed, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
And now our sheriff will close the ceremonies.
The importance of this day having been properly celebrated, I declare this assembly closed. We adjourn until the same time next year.